Thank you very much, Matt. My name is Jeffrey Tucker. I'm the editorial director of the American Institute for Economic Research, and I'm so grateful for this invitation to address you, the Maine Policy Institute, which has been just absolutely heroic throughout this period of crisis. I hope you understand just how important your voice has been, because like you, I've been shocked at how few people have had the courage to stand up and say what's true about these lockdowns and the crisis into which we've been plunged this year, this dreadful, sad year of 2020, during which time things have happened to us that we never even imagined possible. And I believe that the only way really to fight them is through ideas and getting those ideas out there. And AIER was very happy to cooperate with Maine Policy Institute on this struggle. So your voice, it was so important. We both know this. There were not enough people and not enough state-based think tanks that were really on this, but you produced scientific work that was truth-telling, and so proud to be a partner with you. Maybe you recognize this room I'm in. I'm not sure if you would, but this room is what we call the Harwood office. It's a very beautiful room. A fortnight ago, the Great Barrington Declaration was signed right here on this table, and after an extraordinary weekend. And then everything changed, as you know. It only took a week for the World Health Organization to change its own policy on lockdowns and make a specific statement against lockdowns. That was amazing. The White House shifted its policy. The Great Barrington Declaration has been endorsed by many top intellectuals, been signed by 10,000 scientists in a variety of fields. We estimate probably 5,000 scientists that specialize in health policy and medicine. And also 600,000, as of this moment where I'm speaking to you, 600,000 members of the general public. So this needed to happen. Something needed to happen. So maybe now's a good time to quickly tell you the story of the Great Barrington Declaration, where it came from, and who signed it, and why. The instigator of the whole thing is a man named Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. I just got off the phone with him. I like to think of him as the John the Baptist of COVID policy. You know, he's just wildly passionate. It's very interesting. When I first we've been involved in a very lonely struggle for all these months. And it was only about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I saw this scientist, epidemiologist from Harvard, tweeting against lockdowns. And I thought, this man must be the loneliest man in the world. So I just dropped him a Twitter note and I said, hey, why don't you come visit us here at the house? And he said, but I don't understand what you're asking. I said, we have a house and we have a professional chef. And he's like, now that sounds interesting. He's a very sweet man. So he came here with alone initially, right? And then and we invited a few other people. There was Stacy Rudin and then also Janine Eunice, both attorneys, one in New Jersey, one in New York, public defender in New York. And we have our own fellows and students and a handful of other people. We had no agenda. And Martin showed up, and wow, it was quite a special weekend. We had no plans whatsoever. We just kind of hung out and went to a cidery and that sort of thing. Just talked about this catastrophe. In fact, we didn't do anything else for 3 days, but talk about COVID-19 and the policy response. It was really interesting. You know yourself, you drive your family crazy with COVID talk. Can we talk about something else? And you're like, well, there isn't anything else. That's the problem, right? So we did this for 3 days. And then about 4 days later, he said, Martin called me up and said, Jeffrey, we really need a meeting of top scientists and journalists. I've got some people in mind I would like to invite. I said, well, who's that? He said, Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford and Sunetra Gupta. Now, Sunetra Gupta from Oxford. Sunetra Gupta is the greatest epidemiologist in the world and also a top philosopher. I like to think of her as the Hayek of infectious diseases, an absolute genius. but hey, there are travel restrictions. You can't even fly here from London, which is a scandal in itself. I said, how can this possibly happen? And he said, well, I can talk to Scott Atlas at the White House, and maybe we can get an invitation. I thought, okay, this is never going to happen. I said, when would you like to do this? And I said, we can do it on the 31st. And he said, there's no time. We can't wait. We have to do it this weekend. I was just amazed and shocked. I thought, that's crazy. But anyway, we opened up, and sure enough, by Wednesday, we did get clearance for Sinatra to come. By Thursday, she had her ticket. By Friday, she was sitting amongst us, along with Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, Martin Kulldorff, David Zweig, most often writes for the New York Times, good articles for the New York Times, I should say. And then we had John Tamney from Real Clear Politics, and all of our students and scholars, and we were sitting in that room. Maybe I'll take you over there. And it was amazing. We didn't have any agenda whatsoever. But we did stand in this, we did sit in this living room. We put up chairs over here and set the journalists here and other people here. And the gentleman who's filming me right now also filmed that, along with, I had a couple of other cameras. But it was put together very quickly, very quickly. We went for 2 hours talking about very important matters of public health, cell biology, and all the implications of what's happened to us and why. And it was absolutely riveting. I mean, my heart was pounding throughout the entire thing. And should I sit down? It's okay. And that lasted from 10 until noon, and then we broke for lunch. And we all had a sense that we were involved in something truly historic. But you can't be sure about these things, right? You can never know for sure. That afternoon, there were interviews. The journalists would interview the scientists. The scientists enjoyed themselves, talked to each other, talked to the students. It's very special. We had a nice dinner. The next day was a very interesting day because they were already getting invitations for interviews and that sort of thing. But the next day was the day when the declaration was drafted. It was drafted very, very quickly, actually, remarkably fast. And they put it up there. Our webmaster built the site for them, invited signatures. We had planned to release it in about 48 hours. Beautiful declaration, It's only 1,300 words, and just a statement of heart from the from the point of view of public health. I mean, it's so strange to me. It's like very controversial in some sense, but it does nothing other than state the basics that anybody should have learned in 9th grade about cell biology, along with public health concerns, and that's it. So it's a shock that it's become such a source of controversy, but mainly it opposed the lockdowns. That was the main thing. And for some reason, that's become taboo in American life. In fact, just this morning, Scott Atlas, a serious scientist who's now advising the White House, had his own tweets deleted by Twitter. I mean, it's like we live in crazy times. I can't understand it. Maybe I'll try to explain where I think where all this stuff comes from. But anyway, I think that's the whole story of Great Barrington Declaration, except I will tell you this. When it was being signed, Jay Bhattacharya said, this is going to get 1 million signatures. And I thought, how naive can you be? I've been involved in digital media for 30 years and 25 years, and there is very little chance that anybody's going to pay any attention to this. As beautiful as it is, as wonderful it is, I don't think it's going to go viral. Because you can't control. Nobody controls the internet really, despite Zuckerberg's pretensions to do so. Ultimately, it's so much driven by what people do and what they share. So I had no sense for sure that this was going to go anywhere. But then the next morning, we weren't prepared to release it, but they had done an interview, and the interviewer had already heard about the declaration and announced it. But now we had a problem. Woke up that morning, I guess it was probably 5 a.m., from frantic texts from everyone, go live, go live, go live. The site was not ready, but we had to go live anyway, and so we did. I have no regrets, no regrets. Things like that just happen. You have to like the Maine Policy Institute, right? You have to be adaptable. You have to see what's necessary, seize the opportunity, move on it, do the right thing regardless, even if it's imperfect, even if it's scrappy. The important thing is to make a difference in the world. And yeah, that was the turning point for all of us. And I think the first bit of light I've experienced in 8 months, some sense of like hope that we can win this, that we can defeat this. And I think I still have some time. So let me just quickly, should I go outside? It's okay. I'm going to give you the briefest possible description of my answer to the question, why? Why did this happen to us? How did it happen that everything we thought was true about the world was not true? The Constitution didn't protect us. The Bill of Rights didn't protect us. The public opinion that we thought was mostly in favor of more or less freedom, sort of stuff. How did that just go away? How did it come to be that overnight we got rid of baseball on Broadway and you can't travel and people are under house arrest and so on? You know the story. You have your own stories. Everyone's experienced tragedy. Like, why did this happen? My shorthand, I don't think there's one answer to this, but I think my shorthand explanation has to begin 20 years ago when the idea of modeling, statistical forecasting, and agent-based statistical analyses began to be applied to disease mitigation. That was began when the computer industry really began to sort of invade everything. It's like, it's not science unless it's computer science. And they invaded health policy. Sunetra Gupta, 20 years ago, denounced this. She said this is very troubling, very dangerous. It's a form of central planning, and you can't centrally plan a virus. You can't centrally plan disease mitigation. So she's always been passionate about this. Things really got going in 2006 when George W. Bush, the apocalyptic president who lived through 9/11, invaded all these countries, thought that the solution to everything was big explosive policy responses, invited a bunch of epidemiologists. Well, what he did was he went to the VA, Veterans Administration, to the State Department, to the CDC and to the World Health Organization, and invited them all to present papers at the White House on what to do in the event of the next pandemic. By pandemic, he meant biochemical warfare, which he was very fearful of because of what had happened in Iraq and so on. There were two basic schools that presented there. One represented the medical doctors who said, well, you wait for the pathogen to come and you figure out who's vulnerable and you try to mitigate the disease, doctor-patient relationships and that sort of thing, while you try to come up with therapeutics. And well, Bush found that answer extremely boring. So on the other side, there were the modelers, right, led by Robert Snow and his 14-year-old daughter, from whom he got the idea of social distancing and targeted layered containment and curve flattening and all these things. Plan a disease the way you plan the economy. You see the analogy, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And there's the same people who believe you can plan the economy also believe you can mitigate disease through forced human separation and forced closures and that sort of thing. Well, that was their version of events. 3D, PowerPoint presentations, assumption of homogeneity of risk throughout the population. That's where all the bad models come from. And so what did Bush do? He said, oh, that is a great plan. Let's have the CDC write that into their official pandemic plans. Well, this is 2006, and they did. A lot of incredulous people at CDC. In those days, people were actually scandalized by the idea of closures and warned against it. The world's most famous epidemiologist, it was Donald Henderson, the man who is primarily credited with eradicating smallpox in the world, former head of the World Health Organization, actually wrote an entire treatise against travel restrictions, against stay-home orders, against school closures, against all these things, mandatory masks, you name it, completely wiped out the entire lockdown narrative. This is in 2006. And there it sat. And in 2006, I wrote about this. I wrote an article, look what CDC says it can do. Look what they believe they can do. I never imagined it would actually happen, but I was scandalized enough that it was even in the plans, Well, 14 years went by. where these people once at the White House had been holding conferences, they had been super well organized, they got to know each other, they got the mighty funding from Bill Gates and so on, and they really began to mobilize, to try out a social experiment on us. They really wanted to try it out. They waited for the right time. 2009 wasn't it. 2003, 2002, 2003, SARS-CoV-1 wasn't it. Although very deadly disease, it didn't spread very far, and there is, I'm sure as you're aware, there's an inverse relationship between severity and prevalence when it comes to viruses. It turns out SARS-CoV-1 was actually quite deadly, so it went away too quickly for them to try out their new plans. 2009 didn't work. H1N1, right? Now that was a scary one, because that was the same thing as 1918, but nobody cared because we're in the middle of a financial crisis, so they couldn't do what they wanted to do then. Well, so why this year? Why did it happen this year? And I think we all know that the answer has something to do with politics. I don't want to get into this too deeply, but I think it's a mistake to imagine that all these things wouldn't have happened were it not for the great political divisions we have in this country and the passionate desire on the part of a lot of people to make sure that, to put it bluntly, that Trump doesn't win, and I'm a person who wrote an entire book against the ideology that I think he represents. So I'm not a partisan in a sense, but it is derangement. It is insane to destroy society and civilization, destroy the arts, smash travel, take away human rights, promote despair, create conditions under which people don't get cancer screenings and vaccinations and don't even go to the doctor. We abolished dentistry in this country for 3 months. I mean, it's like unbelievable that all this happened. If you're going to do that, you better have very good reasons. They didn't have very good reasons. It was driven by political motives. I think that's true. Well, my friends, here we are, and thank you for listening to me on all this important topic. I'd just like to give a little bit of guidance maybe about the future. I mean, I don't know the future any more than you do, but I think there's going to be hell to pay. I'm not sure how else to put it. I think we're going to win the struggle. You can't suppress the facts. You can't suppress the science. It's not going away. The damage that we've done to our culture and society, not just in the United States, but all over the world, is incalculable and devastating. And we've promoted despair. We've done everything wrong. Everything we thought we knew and accepted about life on Earth, we got rid of it in an instant. You do something like that, there's no coming back from it. Now, you might say, this is the new normal. Everybody's going to accept their tyranny. Look, over the long term, people never accept despotism. People are not meant to live in cages, and they will not tolerate it for long. Maybe for a little while if they think there's a good reason, but it doesn't last. The narrative's collapsing. I encourage you, the Maine Policy Institute, and all the wonderful scholars, writers, and workers there, and thank God for the donors, too. I looked at the list of people who are supporting this luncheon. Thank you to all of you. You need to get passionate, get fiery, be like Martin Kulldorff, don't accept a compromise. Don't believe that the narrative of history is baked into the fabric of our lives and there's nothing you can do about it. That's not true. You can make a difference. The Maine Policy Institute is making a difference. Stick with it. Keep it up. We've got a world to win. This is the time. These are the times we were born to fight. This right now. The reason you love liberty is so that you can fight right now for what you know is true. I'd like to thank you especially for inviting me. It boosted my spirits, and I'm very flattered by the invitation. I hope you have a wonderful luncheon. All the best to you. Thank you.